Hello and welcome to this year's University of Wolverhampton Christmas time lecture. Hopefully everybody can hear me, and that's brilliant, Deb. And so what we need to do is tell people a little bit about the University of Wolverhampton and what the Christmas lecture actually is.
Why not? So this is our 5th annual Christmas lecture. In the times before COVID, we used to do this lecture live in the Arena Theatre in the University of Wolverhampton. But last year and this year, we've had to bring the lecture to Zoom. So we've been delivering the lecture online for a couple of years.
So this means, of course, that this time and last time we can have people that attend from all over the world, which is fantastic.
That's brilliant, yes. Our Christmas lecture is part of a wider lecture series at the University of Wolverhampton that's open to anybody who'd like to join. It's facilitated by the University of Wolverhampton Doctoral College, which is the part of the university that supports researchers. Our lecture series is one of many approaches that we take to communicating the fantastic research that takes place at the university, and it is part of a wider approach to communicating research, outreach and engagement. Martin, you're an Associate Professor of Engagement in Science, Technology, Engineering and Maths. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about how science engagement works?
Yeah, so of course, the University of Wolverhampton sits right at the middle of its community, and it has a commitment to be able to show its community around us that we are indeed the university opportunity and learning is for everyone. And of course, community and public engagement in all of the subject areas that the university does is vitally important, not just when people are thinking about levelling up agendas, not just for the community as a whole, but just to raise those aspirations in our community, to be able to reach out, to show that anybody, you know, from the age of 18 to the age of 100 can come to our university and have a fantastic experience is key. And of course, I'm a scientist, so I love the idea of spreading the word of science, technology, engineering and maths. And it's vitally important, of course, because university is such a transformative experience for everyone that comes here. And of course, these Christmas lectures are part of us reaching out into our community and slowly, you know, maybe cracking down those walls around the university and taking away that divide perhaps between academics and those people that live in the community and around us. And I just want to say we're getting a few messages there coming through on the chat, and that's great. We've even got somebody who's watching all the way from Kosovo, so that's absolutely fantastic.
That's brilliant, thank you. So let's get started, but before we start, we've actually got a special guest joining us today, haven't we?
We certainly have, yes, a very special guest indeed. Hang on. Somebody's on the phone here. Somebody's on the phone. It's Santa, actually. Now he's supposed to be. It's supposed to be. My phone's really going off now in my hands, right? And it's not a gag anymore. And but I'm not going to answer it. And he's supposed to be joining us tonight, but he says unfortunately he can't be with us tonight. He's a very busy man, of course. But what he thought he'd do is get a bit of a head start on the old present delivery shenanigans that he needs to do for his Christmas. And but he's somewhere near Dudley. He's got a bit stuck in a chimney, he says. So he's got a bit stuck up a chimney. So he might. Pardon? What did you say, Santa? No, he's definitely stuck. He's wiggling and wiggling and wiggling, but it's just, he's not budging. He's stuck.
Oh no. So we've got all of these people who've come here from all around the world to see Santa, and he's stuck in a chimney somewhere in the middle of Dudley. What are we going to do?
Well, as it happens, of course, here at the University of Opportunity, we can help Santa just like we can help everyone. And we just happen to have tons of researchers here with us today that might be able to help Santa and I'm sure they can help at least get him shoved out of the chimney, probably.
Fingers crossed. But first, does everybody know who Santa is? So, you know, I've seen Santa in Telford Town Centre, and then I saw him again yesterday in Wolverhampton, and it wasn't the same Santa. And I'm concerned that there are different Santas in different places. So my friend Isa, hello Isa, who's watching, she grew up in Poland, and she told me that Santa Claus visits children on the 6th of December to deliver presents, whereas Santa Claus in the UK delivers presents to children on the 25th of December. So I'm not too sure whether it's the same Santa Claus that's in the UK that visits Poland. What do you think, Martin?
Well, I'll tell you what, I can tell you a little bit more about Santa, absolutely, certainly. So if we can move on a little bit on the presentation, that would be fantastic. Oh, we've got this first. Let's have a bit of this. We've got more YouTube fun to come. And so, of course, this is what all this is about. But let's hope it plays.
When Santa got stuck up the chimney, he began to shout,
He's never going to get out.
If you don't pull me out, my beard is black, there's soot in my sack, my nose is tickling too. When Santa got stuck up the chimney, achoo, achoo, achoo.
Let's go, let's move on. Let's move on.
Before Christmas Day, when Santa Claus arrived.
Next slide, please.
Into the chimney he climbed with his sack, but he wore plight. He stayed up there all night. When Santa got stuck up the chimney, he began to yell, "Oh, hurry, please, it's so
Going on a bit now.
His head's up there in the cold night air. Now Rudolph's nose is blue. When Santa got stuck up the chimney, achoo, achoo, achoo. Rudolph tugged.
Oh no, it's still going.
But Santa
Can we move to the next slide, or will we have to do it all?
We should have come by class.
Thank you. Excellent. So thank you for that. Oh, excellent. So this is my first slide, hopefully. So I just want to talk a little bit about that's us. This is it. I just want to talk a little bit about some of the different faces of the festive season. So, and if we can just go to the next slide, there's a little YouTube clip that needs to load there, and fingers crossed this will load. And this in my house, as this is loading, it is this is what we think of as, and hopefully a lot of people out there maybe might have this sort of social sort of image of Father Christmas. So let's play that video, please.
Oh, hail the jolly fat man. All the kids are so excited to see Santa. The hopeless snow, the mistletoe, the Christmas tree with the lights of so. It's got to be the favorite time of year. Oh, hail the jolly fat man. All the kids are so excited to see Santa. The hopeless snow, the mistletoe, the Christmas tree with the lights of so.
Just keeps going and going and going and going and going. Forever.
All the kids are so excited to see Santa.
Yes, that's enough. Yes, that's enough of Santa. And of course, we have this image of Santa as this beardy, red-coated fella, particularly in the UK. And many of us will be sitting there thinking, well, actually, we know why Santa is red. And we all blame it on the Coca-Cola company. All right. And so a lot of us will be sitting there thinking exactly that. Oh, Coca-Cola's fault, Santa's red. Well, I just want to burst that bubble because actually it's not true. So that is just complete and utter bunkum. And because Santa has been all kinds of different colours, and actually he's been dressed in red since the 1800s. So if we just move on to the next slide, that'd be great, please. So it was really the work of a cartoonist called Thomas Nast, and he first drew Santa, and you can see one of his first drawings here, and that was this is that picture that's just on the sort of the left-hand side of the slide there. He first drew Father Christmas, Santa Claus, whatever you want to call him, as a small sort of elf-like creature that, you know, unfortunately, rather for our Father Christmas these days, right? At first, he was quite a small, lithe-looking fella, a bit like this, and he could easily slip down chimneys, of course, not like our Santa that we've got today. And before this time, he was drawn in green, he was drawn in brown, he was tan, and all sorts of things. And it wasn't until really the work of Thomas Nast actually drawing him like this, then we started to actually formalise this idea of this jolly man in this fur trim sort of coat and that. And you can see there's a picture there, and this was the first proper Father Christmas that we might know, because before this he was always drawn as quite a stern looking fella. And so this happy pipe smoking Santa Claus there was actually first depicted in 1881. And Thomas Nast, he drew lots and lots and lots of things for advertisements. You can see here, this in there, one of the first ones down there, actually selling confectionery. He was on the satirical magazine drawing cartoons of Santa throughout the late 1800s, and like Puck and things like that. But it wasn't until really the 1920s when Coca-Cola started to think, actually, you know, in the 1930s, hang on a minute, everybody is associating our drink there with nice warm weather and cooling down in the warm weather. And so what they wanted to do, they wanted to try and associate drinking Coca-Cola with cold weather too. So what they did was they got somebody called, what was his name? Now his name was Howard Sunbloom. And he was working for an advertising company. And in 1931, he drew these first sort of proper sort of Coca-Cola big fat man Santa Claus that you would certainly recognize today. And actually the model that he used was a friend that lived around the corner. All right, he was just like a salesman that he knew. And he actually got the idea for the description from the fantastic 1822 poem, which is called A Visit from St. Nicholas. And we actually know it as 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. Okay, so actually there's a description of what Santa might look like in there. And so he took that and made the Santa that we know today. Now, of course, depending on where you are, of course, we've got all these different sort of itinerant deities that come in sort of Yuletide time, and you can see maybe a depiction of a more traditional English sort of, I don't know, Santa Claus, for want of a better word, but you can see here it's hiding behind my Zoom screen. We also have this idea of Santa, this sort of wood spirit, this sort of deity that is probably an extension of the woodland god who was called Herne the Hunter. And of course, these different depictions of these sort of more pagan images of our Yule gods have been around with us since the year dot. But let's go on to the next slide, please. But you know what? Even it's not just the image of Santa is controversial. It's even what he's called, and it was even important enough for a YouGov poll to be ran, and this was from 2017. And it's basically, it seems what we decide to call Santa or Father Christmas, and you can see they're both facing off here, is very much dependent, of course, on age. And most of us in the UK will call him Father Christmas with a bit of Santa Claus, but the more younger people over the age of 18, they tend to use Santa Claus rather than Father Christmas, whereas those people who are slightly older use the more traditional terminology. So there is an age-dependent response to our fat man stuck in the chimney, which I thought was really interesting and worth a mention. So let's go on to the next slide, please. And you know what? Although we love Father Christmas, Santa Claus, whatever you want to call him, it is, to be honest, it's quite boring. And so what I wanted to do, I wanted to look at a few different festive traditions from different places of the world. And I've lived in Spain, and I really like Scandinavia and places like that. So what I thought, I'd pick a few things from some of the countries that I've been to and talk about their Christmas traditions. And so if we can go on to the next slide, please. And so if we go to places like Denmark, all over Scandinavia, we might come across the Nissi, or the Tomtenissi, they might be called. Certainly they're called the Tontu if we're in Norway and places like that. And they've got names all over Scandinavia. And what they are the traditional short in stature, 2 to 3 feet, pointy hats, all right, what we might recognize as a gnome, or we might see as a garden gnome. Now, these things, they lurk about at Yuletide time up until when we sort of celebrate Christmas. And what they do is they lurk around farms and protect farms. And actually, they're associated with the winter solstice on December the 22nd and the Christmas season, really. Now, these things, they can be benevolent, and they tend to live on farms. They really, really, really like porridge. And so what people do is they leave porridge out for them. And what they really like is a nice big bit of butter on top of that porridge. And if you don't leave the butter out for them, right, they get very, very angry. Or if you mistreat your animals, they get very, very angry. Or if you urinate in the stables, they get very, very angry. They're very, very moody creatures for Christmas indeed. And what they will do is they will punish you. So they might give you a clip round the ear, certainly. They'll play tricks on you. And what they can also do is kill your animals and burn your farm down. That's right. So they are terrible itinerant gnomes. And, despite their small size, small in stature, they are apparently insanely strong, and they do not like change at all. And so, of course, people leave gifts out for them during the Yuletide time to try and bring luck to the places where they live. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. We've got these porridge-loving gnomes that really like good manners. Next slide, please. Now then, this is one of my favourites. I've lived all over Spain, and a fantastic country it is too. And I just wanted to share with you one tradition that I love from there, and this is from Catalonia. And this is called Tio de Nadal. And what he is sort of a good luck thing, for your house. Again, it's found in Catalan homes. And the tradition of having this log called cagatio is called, literally translated to the poo log. The tradition goes that we invite it into the house on December the 8th, which is at the beginning, because of course we've got a very Roman Catholic country, on the feast of the Immaculate Conception. And what happens is the children all have to keep him warm. That's why he's wearing a blanket. And what we do up until Christmas, we keep him warm. And then what we need to do is feed him, because of course he's a hungry log. So what we do is all the children, they feed him nuts and raisins throughout the Yuletide time up until Christmas. And then on Christmas Day, what happens is there's a bit of a tradition in that all the children have to go out of the room, okay, and they go out of the room, and then the adults, what they do is they take all the nuts and raisins away because they've hidden them under the blanket, and then replace them with little treats and toys and things like that. And then so what happens is then the children at this point, what they've been doing is they've been warming their whacking sticks by the stove, and then they all charge back into the room where our poor poo log is, and then they start to thrash the poo log in the hope it will defecate them presents. So, but there's a song that goes with this that I'd like to share with you. And they're called Cagatio songs. And this is a really traditional one. So you got to imagine a big bunch of kids with sticks and a poor poo log getting smacked up to death, right, pretty much. And all the time, the children are singing this song in the hope that it will defecate them a little treat. And so I wanted to share this with you, so if you don't mind. It goes something like this. Poo Tio, almonds and nougat. Do not poo herrings. They are too salty. Poo nougat. That tastes better. Poo Tio, and every time you say poo Tio, they give it a proper whack, right? And if a toy falls out, they all have to share. If it's sweets or something like that, they get to open the present, and then it all starts again until all the poos come out. So then it goes poo Tio, almonds and nougat, and if you don't want to poo, I will hit you with a stick. Poo Tio. And then once all the presents are gone, in some homes in Catalonia, they will get the bottom of the log that has been defecating and put it in the fire. So poor old Tio Nedal is bringing joy to family through defecation. And I just thought that was absolutely fantastic. What a Christmas tradition that is. I just want to finish. So if we go to the next slide, I just want to finish with, this is by far my favourite. So one of the places I really like, and I like to go as much as I can, apart from Norway, is Iceland. It's a wonderful country, smells of farts, but is a absolutely fantastic place to go. And these are the Yule lads, right? And they are a fantastic tradition. And they start to visit homes. There's 13 of them. They start to visit homes 13 days before Christmas, right? Through that run up to Christmas. And they're basically the world's most dysfunctional family, these people. So we've got 13 sons and they live with their parents, right? Grilla is their mum. And what she is a cannibalistic giantess. And she eats the flesh of, right, you've got to remember it's dark a lot in Iceland, right? So this is got to have been where this has come from. Good imaginations. This giantess, what she does is she boils the skin off naughty children and eats it and feeds it to her family. Now then, because we've got, like, you know, social stereotypes in every legend in the world, she lives with her husband there called Lepaldi, and he's very lazy and does nothing, just stays at home all day. And so he does nothing, just stays in, and the others go off and about. Now, we like cats. We've got Gerald here in the background, perhaps kicking around, and but just like he might be over this period, they also live with a cat, right? This is called the Yule cat. And what he does, it's a giant cat. It's much bigger than what's on this picture. He stalks the wastelands, if you like, the forests and the countryside, right? And what he will do is, if you haven't been given new clothes for Christmas, he will eat you as well. So there's a lot of eating going on. But in those 13 days, of course, the Yule lads will come to visit you. Now, all the way through this period, children in Iceland, what they'll do is, there he is, look, the Yule cat. All the time, children in Iceland, what they'll do is they'll put their shoes on the windowsills in the hope the Yule lads will leave them sweets. If they've been good, certainly that might happen. If they haven't been good, they just got given a rotten potato. And so that's not good. But I'd like to share with you some of their names, because they've all got particular names that are linked to their talents. And so here we go. And you might recognise some of these habits in your relatives, but we'll wait and see, or the people that you live with. I hope not. All right, so here we go. So let's go from the top here. And this is, we're going from the 12th of December to the 24th of December, because they'll come until Christmas Eve. And firstly, we have brother one, that is Sheep Clod. He just harasses sheep. And so that's what he does. However, he's got a peg leg, right? Well, actually, he's got two peg legs, so he can't chase them very well. That's it. That's as simple as that. So he's a man with two peg legs that runs after sheep. There's somebody called Gully Gork. He's one of the brothers. And all he does is just, he just finds a gully, you know, like a little bit in the ground, just hides there. And what he does then, and he hides there and waits for you to go out of your milking shed. And then he goes in and steals the milk from cows. Ooh, shady. And Stubby, okay, he's a bit short in stature. He's abnormally short, but also he really likes that sticky bit that you get on cooking pans. So he'll scrape up the leftover bits of pastry and stuck on stuff, that biscuit on the bottom of the pans, and he steals that. There's Pot Scraper. He's a bit like that. Sorry, we've missed one. There's Spoon Licker. He steals and licks wooden spoons. So don't leave them lying around, otherwise they've been licked by the Yule lads. But he's described as being incredibly thin due to malnutrition. So obviously he's not licking enough spoons. And pot scraper, he steals the leftovers from pots. That's good. Bowl licker, he hides under your bed. And you know, when you've had cereal or something like that, you put your bowl down, just nicks it. Bowl and everything. All right, steals that, whisks it away. So that's where all your bowls are going, by the way, everyone, during the Christmas period. It's the bowl licker. Now we've got the door slammer. It's all in the name for that one. What he'll do, he'll slam doors in the middle of the night and wake you up and really annoy you. He comes on the 18th of December, and these are all consecutive, so we're working towards Christmas Eve. And then we've got Skyr Gobbler, because, of course, the Scandinavians have got a liking for fermented yogurt, of course. So, of course, Skyr Gobbler does exactly what it says on the tin for that one. Leave a skyr around, gone. And this is one of my favourite ones, sausage swiper. He'll, if you've got like sausages, like salamis drying up in front of your fire, turn your back, sausage gone. Sausage gone. The sausage swiper attacks on the 20th of December. And so on, then we've got window peeper. You know, when you look at a window, you think somebody's looking at you through the window. It's the window peeper. And he's one of the brothers there. And he looks through windows in search of things to steal. So he's not one to have. And he comes on the 21st. And there's one. Why? I have no idea where these names come from, but they are fantastic. And they're all literal translations as well, by the way. And there's one called Doorway Sniffer. And he's got an abnormally large nose and acute sense of smell. And what he tries to do is locate a particular kind of bread we make at the Yuletide time in Iceland called leaf bread. And one of my favourite ones is meat hook. Right now, this sounds like he's like some sort of murderous brother, but all he does is steal meat with a hook, nothing else. And so it's not as exciting as it sounds, to be honest. And then finally, on the 24th, we will be visited by the candle stealer. And so he follows children in order to steal their candles. And of course, we need to remember that they used to be made out of fat, tallow, so they were edible. So of course, this was where this legend comes from. Now, they've got two itinerant sisters that live on the west coast as well of Iceland. You don't hear about these very much, but what they do is they steal fat from your pan when it's warm and runny by sticking it up their nose and pouring it in their socks. And so these are the Christmas traditions of some of the places around the world. Can we go to the next slide, please? And but you know what? Wherever we are, there's a benevolent deity or spirit of some kind looking over us this Yuletide time. But Deborah, ours is still stuck up that chimney.
I know, Martin, and that is really worrying me. But it's good to know about the various different Santas and the various different entities around the world, even if some of them are really scary. We've got so many people joining us from all around the world. We've got people from Kosovo, we've got people from the United States, we've got people from Canada, as well as people all over the UK joining us today. But thank you for telling us all about Santa.
My pleasure.
But we still need to find some help to get our Santa out of the chimney.
Okay, so what I've been thinking is, you know, we've got Dr. Jenny Gilbert and Elizabeth Thompson from the Black Country Study Centre and Black Country Living Museum. They might be able to help us. That's
brilliant. Elizabeth, if I remember rightly, is a heritage advisor at Canals and the Ricer Trust and is a PhD researcher at the Black Country Living Museum.
Now, Jenny, of course, is a public historian, researcher and the coordinator of the Black Country Studies Centre, which is a collaborative initiative between the University of Wolverhampton and the Black Country Living Museum.
So that's really good, because I'm pretty sure they're going to know all about chimneys in the Black Country, and we need to know that since our Santa's stuck in one in Dudley.
Certainly. All right, it's good. You know, it's good they're in the Black Country, and it's good he is, because we might be able to sort him out just in time. And I think they can tell us why Santa is absolutely so insistent on using chimneys to deliver gifts. You know, it's really baffled me, you know, why, you know, he could pick the locks, he could turn into smoke like a Dracula, right? And like a vampire, go under the door, you know, but he uses a chimney, you know. Jenny, Elizabeth, Santa, he needs your help.
Right, good evening, everyone. So I'm just going to briefly talk about chimneys and the development of chimneys. So before chimneys were developed, many dwellings had a central fire where smoke was left to escape via a current of warmed air which went through the rafters and gaps in walls, and you can see them there on this image. And it must have been really uncomfortable for people. The central hearth, you can see there where people would have gathered round a warm central fire. It also meant that Santa, it was nigh on impossible for him to come down any kind of chimney because the chimney wasn't there. So he would have bumped into children as he entered through the main doorway. So move on a few years, and here we have Dudley Castle. There is evidence in castles, abbeys and hall houses from the 12th century onwards that indicate that chimneys were developed around the 12th century, where smoke could be channeled inside a chimney flue and guided up to a suitable exit. And there are remains of chimneys at Dudley Castle. And from development works, you can kind of work out that they were probably from the 16th century, which is quite late, where a funnel-shaped flue was cut through the thickness of the thick stone walls, and then the flue sloped backwards and upwards at an angle of about 45 degrees. And inside the fireplaces, these were fitted with stone collecting hoods and canopies to make them a bit ornate inside. Later on, here we have the old hall in Wolverhampton, which sadly is no longer with us. But this was one of the very earliest large mansion type houses in Wolverhampton. It was in the city centre. And you can see that the amount of chimneys on this building, they were seen as a status symbol. And Valentine Fletcher, writing in Chimney Pots and Stacks, suggests that a room without a chimney was considered unfit for visitors. And then we move on. We can see here Bromwich Hall in West Bromwich and Lindy Lewes in Wolverhampton. You can see here that these have got chimneys built in brick, and these are stuck onto the timber frame buildings which had already been built, and they had to integrate chimneys as part of this development. So you can see there how Santa could have easily gained access down these chimneys. And you can see how chimneys develop through time by looking at some of these buildings. And then just a quick look at the development of chimney pots here. Decorative chimney pots were used quite early on. There's evidence of them being used in the 12th century. The one on the left, you can see it's extremely decorative. And these were, I mean, really special for artisans to work on. They would have built them in brick. The picture to the right, that's quite scary. That's in Oxford. And they went to town with chimney pots at the time. They were seen again as a status symbol. And then I move on to Georgian housing, which became far more elegant and refined, limited architectural detailing. And you can see that pattern there of the chimneys. The chimneys became integrated to the part of the house, and they had flue systems all the way down into the cellars where the cook would have been making the food, all the way up to the top of the house into the eaves there, and where the maid would have been probably slept at night. And then there would have been a series of interconnecting fireplaces to these central chimneys. And then the role of the chimney sweep, obviously a helping hand for Santa here. With the development of the chimney, there was a whole new industry created for workers, and unfortunately a lot of the workers were children. And so quite late on, after chimneys were developed, largely in the 16th century in most dwellings, there had to be the Chimney Sweepers and Chimney Regulations Act, and this was in 1840, which prohibited anyone under the age of 21 to work in chimneys. However, that it was largely just legislation which wasn't followed. You and I know that children were used as chimney sweeps well into the 19th century, possibly beyond, and further legislation was introduced in 1875 and even as late as 1938 to prevent children working in these chimneys. And I move on slightly from domestic architecture to this wonderful painting by Edwin Butler Bayliss of the Black Country, and you can see the scene. There's a few chimneys there, and the development of the Black Country and its industry meant there had to be a vast number of chimneys created to power the furnaces and the engine houses. And Charles Dickens, who wrote in the Old Curiosity Shops, tall chimneys crowding on each other and presenting the endless repetition of the same dull, ugly form poured out on their plague of smoke, obscured the light and made foul the melancholy air. And this is writing in 1841, the height of the Industrial Revolution in the area, when hundreds of people are working in grimy conditions. And this image from 1866 really shows the amount of chimneys that would have been scattered across the area. I don't think Santa was coming down any of these chimneys. And the Illustrated London News wrote, "The lurid smoke and flame of the countless furnaces and forges fill the sky with a fierce glare, which throws out gigantic shadows of the shape of buildings, tall chimneys, rendering the scene one of the strangest and most fantastic that can be witnessed anywhere." Just imagine that sight. And then we move on nice and breezily to posh chimneys at Whitwick Manor. I mentioned before that chimneys were a real status symbol, and this carried on into the Edwardian era, when just down the road from the university in Whitwick, the Mander family built this amazing house and really went to town with the chimneys. And you put that in comparison with where most people were living in Wolverhampton, terraced housing. This is just down the road from the Molyneux. And that systematic approach with the chimneys in the middle of the house, so it could serve a series of flues to heat the house up. Plenty of chimneys there for Father Christmas or Santa to come down, whoever what we call him. And finally, by the 1930s, a lot of houses were being heated by electric or gas power, which kind of rendered the chimney useless. So chimneys were installed, and there were still open fires put in one main sitting room. But roll on a few years, and now what we have is most houses built today don't actually need a chimney because they're not built with many open fireplaces. So what a lot of house builders do is plonk on a brand new chimney right at the end of the build, and we have fake chimneys, which is good news for Santa if he can get down them. It's bar humbug for the chimney. So I'll just pass on to Jenny now, who's going to talk more about fireplaces, and thank you.
All right, everyone, thank you so much for that, Lizzie. I'm Dr. Jenny Gilbert. I am the coordinator of the Black Country Studies Centre, which is a partnership between the University of Wolverhampton and the Black Country Living Museum. And I'm also a historic researcher at the museum as well. So I'm going to be picking up where Lizzie left off with the chimneys and talking a little bit more about the festive fireplace. So as Lizzie was sort of talking about there, in the 1930s, we had the introduction of central heating into many homes. And up until this point, the fireplace had been the heart of every home. And it was taken for granted, even in, as this quote here by the author Nicholas Hill states, that it was taken for granted even in the humblest dwelling. However, there's something about the fireplace that even in our centrally heated homes, our digitally connected homes, the fire, people are still drawn to it, to the point that I don't have a chimney, I don't have a fireplace, but we've actually got a Netflix fire blazing in the background. And it makes everything cozy, it makes everything feel warm and really kind of lovely to have. And I feel I should also point out that in my job, you end up collecting a lot of very bizarre books, including this one by the aforementioned Nicholas Hill, The English Fireplace. So there's plenty of fun fireplace facts in here. There's a whole section on Christmas fireplaces as well. So yeah, a really interesting book if you want to go and learn any more about fireplaces after this. So fireplaces, we still sort of create them, even if we don't have chimneys, even if we don't have fires in the home, we still create that sort of central focal point of the home. And another quote from Charles Dickens. I've got a feeling he might be turning up quite a bit this evening. But Charles Dickens was very much the creator of our contemporary idea of Christmas. In the Victorian period, he kind of constructed our idea of that cosy sort of traditional Christmas, and the fire was central to that. He talked about, in the Christmas Carol, about a cheerful company assembled round a glowing fire. And this was when he was visiting, I think he's with the Ghost of Christmas Future, possibly, and they go and see a mining community where even in this sort of humble miner's cottage, they still see these cheerful, happy people assembled round this fire. And again, it's that idea that even if it's the most humblest of dwellings, the most humblest of settings, the fire still creates this kind of magical and cheerful atmosphere. And I think Martin touched on this when he was talking about some of the early forms of Father Christmas and sort of international forms of Father Christmas as well. But when we talk about fire in the home at this time of year, it all leads back to the ancient pagan festival of Yule. And the Christian church was very clever in the way it adopted some of the symbols and some of the traditions of kind of pagan societies. And the Yule log in particular, they sort of took the festival of Yule, which runs from the 21st, so the winter solstice, through to the 1st of January. They took that pagan festival and they placed Christmas to coincide with that. So they were taking something popular and using it to kind of further their kind of religious cause. So here we can see an image from 1832 of the Yule log being carried into a home. And the Yule log was a large log, often almost the size of a tree, that would be taken into the home and burnt gradually in small sections over the 12 days of Christmas. And there were a range of superstitions and traditions attached to it. So people would keep the remains of the log under the bed and use it to start the fire next year, etc. And these traditions were predominantly in sort of Northern Europe and North America. And this is where we get the idea of fire as having some sort of connections to perhaps spirituality and the divine as well. So kind of Jesus, the light of the world, within kind of Christian traditions as well. So we're particularly, and Nicholas Hills here picks up on this sort of use of the fire and the fireplace at Christmas time. We particularly associate one festival today with the hearth, that of Christmas, not just for burning the Yule log, but as a private landing strip for Santa Claus himself, which leads us to our topic for this evening. Why do we associate Father Christmas with the fireplace? Why do we associate him with the chimneys? So let's take a little look at where this all comes from. So many of us will be hanging our stockings on the chimney wall over the next few days. And this tradition is all linked to the legend of St. Nicholas, who was born in AD 270 in Patara within the Roman Empire. And he's the patron saint of repentant thieves, prostitutes and children. And so he's quite a varied, he's a man of many interests, let's say, in that respect. He's a patron saint of many things. But one of the things that's common across all of his work is that he was a legendary giver of gifts, and that his legend is rooted in the idea of giving away gifts. He was born incredibly wealthy, but he was always a bit uncomfortable with that, and he became aware of a poor father who was unable to raise a dowry, which was money that would be presented to the daughter upon her marriage, for his 3 daughters. So this man was unable to raise the funds for his daughters to marry. And St. Nicholas couldn't abide by this. So apparently the father was quite proud and wouldn't accept a gift. So as a way around this, St. Nicholas threw some money through their window secretly. And over the years, this kind of evolved, and it became that he threw the money down the chimney. And a further sort of later version of the legend states that the coins landed in stockings that were drying by the fire. So St Nicholas had very good aim in that respect. And that's where the tradition of presents being placed in stockings comes from. And there are various other sort of origin myths for that. So in addition to the stockings, you'll often see fireplaces at this time of year adorned with Christmas greenery. And at the Black Country Living Museum, this is kind of a key part of the decor at this time of year, because if you think of working class families, they wouldn't necessarily have had money for elaborate decorations. So it was very much determined by materials that were available locally and for free. So Christmas greenery would be bought indoors as a way of kind of symbolising life and colour in the darkest part of the year. So even dating back to the 15th century, you see accounts of every man's house and also his parish church being decked with holm, ivy, bays and whatever the season of the year afforded to be green. And this is a lovely, very sentimental image of that classic Victorian Christmas. You've got the ivy, holly and ivy garland draped over the fireplace. You've got the stockings there as well. And this isn't so much a historically accurate image, it's more an image of how we represent Christmas and that sort of where these ideas come from and how we create these kind of very sentimental images of Christmas. And the greenery is central there. And of course, the Christmas tree, that was another Victorian tradition introduced by Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. Prince Albert was of German origin and he saw Christmas trees and he wanted to introduce them to British society, and he donated them to places like schools, etc. And it really caught on. And so we have kind of the Victorians to thank for the Christmas tree as well. And I just want to show you a few quick images now of the fireplaces at Christmas at the Black Country Living Museum. They're sort of not quite in chronological order, but this is an image of our 1930s fireplace. This is from last year, actually. This year it's got 2 stockings as opposed to 1, maybe a new arrival in the 1930s apartment family there. But you can see there you've got the stocking and you've got those paper chains, and it's quite a simple, quite a subdued perhaps form of decor at this point. You've got some garlands draped around the room and everything, you know, it's got quite that modernist, almost sort of a working class adaptation of Art Deco at the fireplace there as well. You've got a couple of Christmas cards, another Victorian adventure nestled on the mantelpiece there. And as I mentioned earlier, at the museum, we're very much about telling working class stories. And a working class Christmas, especially during the Victorian period, would have looked very different to how we imagine Christmas today. It wouldn't have been as elaborate. There wouldn't have been simply as much stuff in people's homes. And the decor would have been, again, very natural, using natural materials that could be found nearby. And sometimes people come into the museum and they're like, oh, it doesn't look as Christmassy as I was expecting. And that's because Christmas in the past was perhaps a little bit sparser. And people would very much have to make do with quite meagre means. But we still managed to create a really lovely, warm, festive atmosphere. And again, it's that idea that even the humblest of dwellings would have these very festive and welcoming fireplaces. So here you can see some beautiful Christmas greenery that has been placed on the fireplace in the Anchor Maker's cottage. And you can just see that kind of wider shot there. You've got that picture, I believe it's of one of Victoria's Jubilees. You've got the paper chains again draped over, and you've got these lovely festive floral arrangements with holly, a little bit of fur in there as well. And here we can see a kitchen setting. Again, going back, the range in people's kitchens would have been the centre of food preparation for the Christmas feast. But also, again, it's this idea of the welcoming and warm social aspect of it all as well. So you can see that fireplace in the background there. And for me, looking at a picture like that, I can almost smell those kind of festive spices or some meat roasting. So the fires, and again, in working class homes, you didn't have many rooms, so your kitchen space would have been multifunctional. It would have been a place where people gathered, as well as a place where people cooked. So it was a much more multifunctional space. And again, the hearth would have been both practical but also a social area. So again, it's this idea that the fireplace has long been and remains the heart of the home, whether it's a real fire or whether it's a digital one like the one blazing behind me. I'd like to thank you all for your time, and thank you to Lizzie as well. And thank you all very much for listening, and have a wonderful Christmas. And I really hope we can get Father Christmas out of this chimney. Over to you, Martin and Deborah.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Jenny and Elizabeth. And, you know, in my head now, I've got pictures of Dick Van Dyke, you know, jumping around on rooftops. And what I was really pleased to see there in that first part of that presentation, my jumper seems to have made an inadvertent appearance in one of those slides, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And of course, we know more now about this festive access point to our houses, and the importance perhaps of the hearth to the home and people that have them. And we even know now, so really thank you for this, why then maybe Santa has a bit of a liking for trying to squeeze down chimneys, which is quite important, I think.
Yeah, the only trouble is, Martin, Santa is still stuck up that chimney, and you know he's quite well, you know, we've had quite a lot of lockdowns recently, and quite a few of us aren't quite as agile as we used to be. Any thoughts on who else can give Santa some advice?
Well, you know, we're all suffering from the COVID stone, right? It's still that ball and chain that's stopping us running up the stairs. And every time I walk up from the car park to work, I feel that dragging behind me. I really do. But we're really lucky because we have Professor Tracy Davenport with us today. And she's done loads of research about healthy eating. And perhaps, I reckon, she might be able to give Santa some advice.
That's a great idea.
So Tracy is the chair of the Sport and Physical Activity Research Centre at the University of Wolverhampton. She teaches and researches in sport and exercise, and has published 68 academic articles in journals, 3 books, 14 chapters and 11 professional papers. And I wonder if she exercises while she's doing it all as well.
He also is a consultant and has provided support to the junior national athletes in sports such as tennis, swimming, badminton, judo, hockey and netball. And she's been doing this for over 20 years. Over to you, Tracy.
Thank you very much, Martin and Deborah. If we could go on to the first slide.